When it comes to retiring, we talk about a lot of things that need to happen, but not a lot of folks discuss what you need to sell when you retire. And I'm sorry, this is another one of those videos that's going to be a gut punch for a few, but it's the truth, and I'll explain exactly why you need to sell these things. All right, I know sometimes these videos can be hard to hear, but I want you to be successful in retirement. And actually, you can do these ahead of retirement. As a matter of fact, I would actually recommend doing all of these well ahead of retirement. But I understand a lot of my folks, especially we're just older, right? You're like me, maybe you're, in your 50s, maybe you're even in your 60s. And so you've got to look at it kind of from that perspective there, because I want you to be able to be successful and have a successful retirement and financial freedom. That's what I want for every single one of you. And these are ways, these 4 things, if you sell them, will help ensure and kind of secure that future that you have in front of you. And more importantly, lower the stress. Basically, you're making everything better and lowering the risk over here on the other side at the same exact time. And I think that's what we all want in retirement, is an actual feeling of the stress going down and the security going up. So the first thing you need to sell is your big house. Now look, I know this one goes against all the conventional wisdom and definitely the quote unquote American dream, if you happen to be American or whatever the case is. The reality is, it's actually a trap that destroys your retirement as you move forward in a lot of cases. You're seeing it right now, especially with the increase in property prices, right? Everybody's property's gone through the roof. But as a retiree, that doesn't help you any, because now it just means your taxes went up. It means your insurance costs went up. And more importantly, you're not using that big house. I know we all have this idea that we want this hallmark moment in our head, but the reality is, if you're hanging on for the grandkids, for example, or your kids to come visit and they bring the grandkids don't freaking care when they're younger and they actually want to visit you. When you need the space is when they're teenagers and they want nothing to do with you at that stage. But when they're younger, you can throw them in a closet and they'll have the time of their lives. Heck, make tents in the living room. They'll have the best time ever. But they don't need individual bedrooms. They don't need a place to do all their different activities and all that sort of stuff. As kids, they just want to see you and be around you. And by the time they're old enough to not, they probably don't want to go to grandma or grandpa's house anyways. I'm sorry. I know that reality sucks. I know that reality hurts in a lot of ways, but there's a lot of folks that are hanging on to this idea, or it's a pride thing. They want to have a big house. They can't imagine downsizing. They can't imagine, telling their friends and family that they don't live in this magnificent house anymore. They've moved over here in order to keep the stress down and lower their cost in retirement. Remember, you got to clean that sucker. You got to pay for the heating and the electric bills for the, 3,000 square feet versus 1,500 square feet, for example. Your taxes come down, your insurance come down. Every single piece of that says more secure retirement and lower cost in retirement. So if we get 10% inflation, you're a heck of a lot more protected, as opposed to the folks trying to hang on to that big house aren't going to have that same protection. Now, if you have enough plenty of money in retirement and it's absolutely something to where, hey, you've got a $10 million nest egg and you only got a, $300,000 house and it happens to be 3,000 square feet and you can easily take care of everything. Okay, then maybe it makes sense. But most people are not in that scenario. They're able to retire, barely retire, and not necessarily retire as comfortably as they thought. And one of the first things that, if you sit down and you talk with these folks, they need to get rid of that big house. It just doesn't make financial sense all the way around. And as a matter of fact, if you decide to sell it and downsize, you may actually be able to juice your retirement and actually have more assets. Basically take that money, equity, obviously buy your new place, maybe buy no mortgage, of course, is what I would always recommend, and then use the extra money to put it into an investment property or some other security blanket there for you in your retirement. Number 2, sell multiple cars. Now, you guys know I'm a huge advocate for, just buying the cheapest used car you can get by on and kind of make that work, because a lot of times we're just doing it for status, for our own personal ego. We always want quality, and a lot of folks like to throw out safety and some other things of that nature to justify overpaying for a car and getting a new car every 2 years and things of that nature. But the reality is that's not actually true, and it's not actually how it works. Now, I'm not telling you get something that's going to break down all the time and leave you stranded, especially as you get older. I'm not saying that at all, but thinking about your car situation and going, hey, can we get away with basically only having one car at this stage in life? Because, hey, we're retired. We don't need to do that. Maybe you get one car and then you have a secondary, kind of almost like a play toy or whatever, but it's something that it may not be ideal in day-to-day use, but for every once in a while when you need that second car, maybe that makes sense. But what I routinely see when I sit down with retirees who are struggling, or people that want to retire, but they can't retire, I see 2 new cars in the driveway. I see 2 SUVs, more importantly, and they don't have any kids at home. It makes no sense. You're paying for all that extra space. It's the same exact thing like we just talked about with a big car. Hey, you got 2 SUVs. Why? Well, the grandkids. Cool. Well, where do you live? Well, I live in Pennsylvania. Where do the grandkids live? Oh, they live in California. What are we talking about here? It makes absolutely no sense, but I see it all the time. You don't need 2 brand new SUVs when you're retired. I'm sorry. It's just not what you need at all. As a matter of fact, you probably only need 1 car, and you get down to all these sorts of things, and it's much more of a convenience factor. It's much more of a, I just want that just in case. It's not a need at that particular point in stage. And especially when you sit down and you look at day-to-day life and the reality, it's just not. And there's no way you can justify 2 SUVs as retirees, 2 brand new SUVs. Now, again, if you got the money, you got $10 million, you're living a modest lifestyle, makes perfect sense. Go nuts. But that's not what the vast majority of people are in. The vast majority of people are trying to figure out how to retire and maintain that big house and maintain having 2 brand new cars all the time and having, $1,200, $1,500 worth of car payments every month and other things of that nature. Oh, by the way, not including insurance and maintenance and everything else involved with all that sort of stuff. Get that sort of thinking out of your head and get rid of those cars. The third thing you need to sell is risky assets. Now, this is one that I'm seeing more and more as I think just information is coming more and more readily available, obviously right here on YouTube and a lot of other places. I am seeing folks who are close to retirement or are retired taking on excessive risk in their portfolios for what reason they can't really tell me outside of just making more money. And I'm like, well, do you need more money? Where are you at in regards to your, retirement? A lot of these people are retired, but if all of a sudden the stock market and what they own takes a 40 or 50% haircut again, they're not retired anymore. They're going back to work, but yet they have $2 million in those type of assets instead of in safer assets. It makes absolutely no sense at that stage. You work all that time in order to retire. At that stage, that's not the time to be taking on risk. The time to take on risk was, when you were 25. And I'm sorry if you didn't decide to take on that risk when you were 25 and now all of a sudden you're 65 and you're retired and it's not quite the retirement you wanted. And so therefore you're like, well, let me just take my nest egg and throw it over here in this. This is guaranteed, this is going to go up. You start watching YouTube videos and a lot of other things of that nature. And obviously maybe you get hooked on one of those pumpers, who's telling you, Tesla's going to $3,000 tomorrow or something like that. So you're like, oh, just an easy way for me to, 10X my portfolio really, really fast. And before you know it, you're on this roller coaster ride of emotions to where, you have a secure retirement and all of a sudden your retirement looks better. And all of a sudden you can't retire at all. You just end up in the wrong spot. That is the wrong time to do that. You need to sell those risky assets and move it into more risk-averse assets as you get older because you want to secure that future that you've already worked hard for. You worked 40-something years. You got to the finish line. You got retired. You're there, but all of a sudden you got a little bit greedy. Your lifestyle wasn't enough, or maybe you're trying to justify that big house and 2 brand new cars, and you're not quite there yet. So you end up playing this game where you're putting your retirement at risk. And that, to me, in my opinion, personally, again, not financial advice, not anything else of that nature, that to me is just foolish and you're falling for the get rich quick things that people always talk about instead of addressing the actual problem, which is you have a lifestyle creep problem in the first place that you needed to address a long time ago. You probably could have retired a long time ago as well if you would have addressed that. That's exactly what we do in the blacklist. That's the pinned comment down there. We basically take you from zero to hero and show you exactly how to retire and live a rich life without any of that garbage and do it with a lot less money than you thought. But when you retire, owning a bunch of risky assets makes absolutely no sense unless you have a portion of your portfolio that basically, hey, I got my main stuff over here. This stuff is basically no risk or low risk. And that right there can fund my retirement. This money over here can go to zero tomorrow and it doesn't matter. Okay, go play with that money if you want to. But if you're not in that spot, well, guess what? You had 45 years to put yourself in that spot. You didn't. That's okay. But it's not the time to risk your nest egg in order to do that. You just got to move forward and understand where you're at in that process. And the last thing you need to sell is your bad habits. Now, look, I know this one can mean a lot of different things. And honestly, I'm talking about all of them, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, I absolutely agree you should get rid of these decades ahead of retiring. That's the honest truth. But I see a lot of folks, they decide to retire and then all of a sudden that's when they weren't necessarily real healthy beforehand per se. Let's just use that as an example. And all of a sudden they retire and now all they want to do is smoke cigars and drink alcohol and sit on the beach. Makes even less sense at that stage. You talk about cutting your retirement down. You're cutting down your time to retire and enjoy the rest of your life significantly by all of a sudden not working out, not doing anything active at all, sitting on the beach, drinking Mai Tais and smoking cigars. Like you are literally doing the exact opposite thing that you should do. I'm not saying you can't enjoy an occasional alcoholic beverage and a cigar. I'm not saying that at all, but there's a lot of folks, that's kind of the thought in their mind is, oh man, I'm gonna retire, I'm gonna hit the beach and I'm not gonna do anything. I'm just gonna lay back. You're just asking for a terrible quality of life retirement and shortening your actual time that you get to enjoy your retirement by doing things of that nature. And of course, you got to get rid of a lot of your other bad habits as well, right? If you got kind of a little bit of a spending problem, hey, guess what? When you retire, there's no longer that extra money coming in. You can't make it up with extra time working. You can't do a lot of the things that you could do to kind of cover for those poor money habits earlier in life. You don't have those options anymore. So you got to get rid of those bad money habits as well. We all have them. And of course, the better you can get those under control, the more prosperous your retirement and the more secure your retirement will be. So for me, when I look at this, you have to actually sell all of the bad habits that you have, as many of them as possible. Of course, are you going to indulge? Of course, that's the whole point of being retired, is being able to do some things that you want to do that you couldn't normally do. But when you make that more of a lifestyle type thing, understand that it's going to shorten everything. It's going to take away from your actual retirement and what you actually think retirement is. And guys, if you aren't close to retirement or you want a complete system step by step, where I basically take you from zero all the way over here to hero on as little as $300,000 in as little as 1 year, make sure you check out the pinned comment down there. See if a Blacklist membership is right for you. You don't have to move overseas. You don't have to do any of that sort of stuff. All you have to do is work the program, take action, make the hard decisions, and we can absolutely get you there. We'll walk you through. We got coaches, myself, everybody else involved helping you get there. Check it out. It's the pinned comment. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.